Nozipo Marare, a renowned Zimbabwean writer, once said, "Until the lion learns how to write, every story will glorify the hunter." The 2019 general elections will remain one of the most hotly contested elections in Nigeria's 20-year-old democracy. The elections were an opportunity for Nigerians to pass a referendum on the performance of the Buhari-led APC administration, and a true testament to INEC's ability to carry out free, fair and credible elections. Election observers, under the platform of independent foreign observers, commended the INEC and Nigerians over the conduct of the 2019 elections. It observed that the 2019 general elections was fair and credible, and neither party can fault the transparent process that occasioned accreditation and voting. However, the elections was not without glitches. John Kenneth Galbraith says, "Faced with a choice between changing one's mind and proving that there is no need to do so, almost everyone gets busy on the proof." Frank Sonnenberg once said, "Facts don't lie, people do." Abhijit Naskar also remarked that even 1,000 lies become powerless in front of a single truth. Stay with us as we arm you with the facts of INEC's role in the 2019 elections. Winston Churchill once said that he who fails to plan, plans to fail. Prior to the 2019 elections, INEC displayed its full preparedness to conduct free, fair, and credible elections. So much that it released the original date for the 2019 elections in 2017, 2 years to the elections. INEC's continuous voters registration program for the enrollment of new voters started in April 2017 and was scheduled to last until August 2018. INEC conducted these in 4 phases at a local level in 8,809 wards, primarily for people who had not previously registered. INEC then undertook a cleaning and optimization process to identify duplicate records, during which it reported eliminating more than 1 million invalid entries. According to election observers, INEC ensured that permanent voters' card collection was carried out in 98% of all local government areas and undertook voters' education in 74% of all local government areas nationwide. INEC voters' information and voters' sensitization clips were also broadcast on major media outlets during the period leading up to the polls. INEC also displayed its readiness to combat the challenge of low political participation among women and persons with disabilities, which had characterized previous elections. Prior to the polls, the electoral umpire consulted with women's groups and disabled persons organizations. It carried out voters' education targeted at women in 37% of all local governments and voters' education targeted at persons with disability in 30% of all local government areas nationwide. The African Union observers commended INEC for making strong efforts to increase participation of women, youths, and persons with disability in the electoral process. INEC also made adequate arrangements for persons displaced by insecurity in the Northeast in its pre-election plans. In Borno State, the worst hit by insurgency, INEC set up 10 special voting centers to allow more than 400,000 displaced persons to vote. If one thing is clear, INEC approached the scene of the 2019 elections extremely prepared, ready to serve and deliver on its responsibilities. INEC was prepared and poised to deliver credible elections to Nigeria, but met a brick wall. The Electoral Act is Nigeria's primary electoral legislation. However, it features weak transparency and accountability measures, manual voters' accreditation, weak mechanisms for the monitoring of electoral spending, and limited use of technology in the electioneering process. In the light of the pitfalls and shortcomings of the Electoral Act, the National Assembly passed the Electoral Amendment Bill to address the issues. The amendment bill aimed to increase deployment of technology in the electoral process, including electronic voting and electronic smart card readers, monitor and limit campaign expenditure, and essentially deepen the electoral capacity of INEC.
On the day of election, the knowledge that we have is that the activity on the machines and the technology used by INEC has a back end at the headquarters. Is that true?
Well, for everything we do, there has to be a back end. But if you are talking about back end in terms of the places where results are transmitted, I want to make this important clarification. We'll transmit results in 2019 as prescribed by the Electoral Act 2010 as amended, which is essentially manual. It involves the collation and transmission of results physically from one stage to another, and there are prescribed forms. But we are going to pilot the electronic transmission, collation and transmission of results, but will not be used for the purpose of making declaration of winners in the election.
Had this crucial bill been passed into law, INEC would have been sufficiently empowered to conduct transparent, fair, and credible elections in the 2019 polls. INEC had successfully dotted its I's and crossed its T's, and despite the challenges posed by the Electoral Act, it arrived the electoral arena poised to deliver on election day. However, challenges posed by other factors and stakeholders meant that its goal of conducting credible elections became hard and nearly impossible to reach.
Consequently, the Commission has decided to reschedule the presidential and National Assembly elections to Saturday, 23rd February 2019.
INEC gave the following reasons for postponing the elections: the assimilation of over 14 million new voters into the voters' register and cleanup of the register, increase in the number of parties that contested in 2019 elections as compared to 2015, poor weather conditions that hampered distribution of sensitive materials in the days before the elections, intra-party and inter-party litigation which delayed the printing of ballot papers and other sensitive materials, late passage of INEC's electoral budget which delayed the award of contracts for the purchase of equipment, printing of ballot papers and other sensitive materials, and generally delayed funding of the electoral process. A popular proverb says, "You can lead a horse to water, but you cannot force it to drink." INEC thoroughly fulfilled its responsibility to ensure voters' education and sensitization, especially among disenfranchised sects of the Nigerian society. There were 84 million voters registered ahead of the 2019 polls, so INEC had high hopes for election day voters' behavior. Election day, however, was an entirely different story, as voters' turnout did not reflect the commendable efforts of INEC in the pre-election stages. Turnout for the 2019 presidential elections was at a disappointing 34.1%, while turnout for state elections was estimated to be even lower. Although the numbers were disappointing, it came as no surprise, especially as voters' turnout in Nigeria has experienced a steady decline over the years. In the 2007 elections, turnout was 57.7%. In 2011, voters' turnout was 53.7%, and in the 2015 elections, voters' turnout hit 43.65%. The Nigerian electorate has remained a major critic of INEC's conduct of the 2019 elections, with many, especially the youths, taking to social media to express their disenchantment. But the fact remains that the Nigerian electorate had the golden opportunity to come out en masse and elect their leadership of choice. Yet only 28 million out of 84 million registered voters came out to vote. If the electorate fails to exercise its right to vote, what basis does it then have to complain about unsatisfactory and incompetent leadership? The role of INEC was simply to create an enabling environment for voters and empower them with the tools and knowledge to vote. However, it is not within the purview of INEC's powers to mandate voters to participate in polls. According to the EU election mission, INEC was forced to conduct the 2019 elections in a complex, difficult, and politically charged environment. Imagine the uphill task of conducting an election in a country of 200 million people, 91 political parties, over 9,000 contestants nationwide, and wide-reaching ethno-religious sensitivities. Now imagine that this same country's challenges include terrorism in the northeast, agitations in the southeast, farmer-header crises in the middle belt, and banditry in the pockets of the nation. This is what INEC had to contend with in the 2019 elections. In addition to these extensive challenges, INEC reported attacks on its officers, killing, intimidation, and harassment of its staff, obstruction of its duties, and abduction of its officials. Of the 36 states of the Federation, INEC staff faced intimidation and harassment in 20 states. Here are some of the reported incidents of abuse on INEC staff. In a viral video that shook the nation, Ibawuchi Izuchukwu, returning officer for the Imo West Senatorial Zone, alleged that he announced Rochas Okorocha winner of the elections under duress in order to save his life.
Let me just say, when he gave that order, I must, yes, so I must call this result. We do what I was going and he come back. They gave me what I called the rep. Rep now told me to collect the remaining and call the result from them. So you see the pressure. You see the whatever you are asking me.
The duress. That's so strange. That's.
Can you understand the duress?
Yes.
So it is not my mind that this result should be allowed.
In Anambra State, the resident electoral commissioner was harassed by the police on the night of February 23rd in the process of collation of results of the elections. In the Ikwere area of Rivers State, the electoral officer, Mary Imawia, reported that soldiers acting on behalf of a political party invaded her collation center and held her hostage in an attempt to seize the results. In the Emoha area of Rivers of the same state, military personnel raided the local INEC office, shooting and making the collation process impossible. Abduction of INEC officials was recorded in Akwa Ibom, Imo, Katsina, Ogun, Ondo, and Rivers State. In the 2 weeks prior to the scheduled 16 February elections, 3 INEC premises were destroyed by fire and several sensitive and non-sensitive materials for the elections were destroyed, including 198 smart card readers, the printed register of voters, 13 generator sets, and other office equipment. On the eve of the state elections, there was a fire at the INEC office in Akwa Ibom, destroying sensitive and non-sensitive materials. The media reported the burning of INEC offices in Ebonyi and Benue states. Despite the deliberate attack against INEC and attempts at disrupting the electoral process, INEC strived to conduct the elections against all odds. The African Union Observer Mission recognized INEC's contribution to conducting peaceful elections and maintaining a climate that upheld true democracy. Ironically, a key player in the breakdown of law and order in the 2019 elections were the security agencies, whose primary role it was to protect lives and properties, secure election materials, and ensure protection of election officials. Rather than support the role of INEC, security agencies constituted a cog in the wheel of the electoral process. According to a post-election report by the Center for Democracy and Development, security agencies failed to deploy sufficient personnel to safeguard election officials and INEC staff. Situation Room reported that 27% of all polling units did not have adequate security, leaving them vulnerable to attack. There were reports of police officers aiding vote buying and turning a blind eye to ballot box snatching in several states. The military, however, recorded the most brazen acts of electoral violence and disrupting of polls in the 2019 elections. Clean Foundation and other international observers reported that personnel in military uniform engaged in sporadic shooting, killings, voters and observers intimidation, and theft of electoral materials. In Rivers, soldiers and other security agents were seen disrupting collation, harassing INEC officials, and preventing observers from witnessing the collation. In the Okrika local government area of Rivers, for instance, security personnel invaded the INEC office in the area, threatened collation center officials by shooting firearms into the air, and snatched official collated election results. In Lagos, security agents reportedly chased voters and INEC staff away with guns during collation at several polling units. The accusations and evidence of misconduct against the military in particular was so overwhelming that post-election, the army announced the creation of a 9-member committee mandated to investigate the activities of army personnel in all states accused of electoral misconduct. How then are security agencies able to justify the huge sum of 53 billion naira allocated to them by the government to ensure security at the 2019 polls? It has been estimated that a shocking 626 people died from election-related violence in total in the 2019 general elections. Benue, Borno, Kaduna, Rivers, and Zamfara states led with the highest casualties during the elections. The brazen nature of the violence that marred the polls has been a major source of concern for observers and Nigerians as a whole. Election observers blamed the electoral violence on lack of arrest and prosecution of offenders, which encouraged impunity, since offenders were assured that their actions will not have consequences. Although the Electoral Act empowers INEC with the right to prosecute electoral offenders, it is not empowered to investigate offenses and arrest offenders. INEC relies on security agencies, especially the Nigerian Police Force, to investigate electoral offenses and arrest offenders before they are handed over to the legal system, where INEC's role of prosecution begins. How many electoral offenses were investigated and offenders arrested by the police in the 2019 elections? What efforts did the security agencies make to control electoral violence during the elections? Leading up to the 2019 elections, the National Peace Committee organized the signing of the Peace Accord. The signings were in December 2018 and February 2019. The Peace Accord was an agreement between parties to contest the elections fairly, accept the results in good faith, and seek legal recourse when contesting election results. The APC and the PDP were among the parties that signed this accord. Election observers, however, noted that in the weeks leading to the general elections, the leadership of the two main parties became more aggressive and inciting in their utterances. President Buhari famously directed in the weeks leading up to the polls that anyone who snatches ballot boxes does so at the expense of his own life, and urged security agencies to be ruthless with ballot boxes snatchers.
And that anybody who decides to snatch boxes or lead thugs to disturb it, maybe that's the last lawful action he will take. I really give the military and the police to be ruthless.
The statement was interpreted by many as undemocratic and a threat to voters' safety. It can also be recalled that the governor of Kaduna State, Nasir El-Rufai of the APC, on a live election talk show, threatened foreigners intervening in Nigeria's internal affairs.
Okay, those that are calling for anyone to come and intervene in Nigeria, we are waiting for the person that will come and intervene. They will go back in body bags. Okay.
Similarly, the national chairman of the PDP, Prince Uche Secondus, ahead of the 2019 elections, disclosed that the party was ready for war with the APC if elections were found to have been rigged. We have warned INEC not to be allowed to be used by the present President Muhammadu Buhari-led administration to rig the 2019 elections. We are aware that the present government has been pressurizing INEC to help rig the elections. If they do, there will be war. Nigerians will rise up to the challenges. Observers also accused the APC and the PDP of being unable to rein in and control acts of violence and intimidation by their supporters on election day. For instance, in the Bodinga local government of Sokoto, a dispute between the agents of the APC and PDP over attempts by one party's agents to assist voters in voting disrupted the election. Also in Sokoto, the actions of APC and PDP chieftains at Magajingari Ward and Shir Damfarijo Ward halted polling for about 3 hours until the police intervened. The vast amount of electoral offenders arrested during the 2019 polls were identified as political thugs hired by the political elites to disrupt or influence voting. For instance, in the Kano State supplementary elections, thugs armed with sticks, clubs and machetes were reportedly seen patrolling the region. The PDP alleged that APC's thugs took over polling activities in several local government areas, including Nasarawa, Dala, Karaye, and Gaya. The PDP also alleged that the APC's thugs freely voted with adulterated PVCs and posed as INEC officials. In Benue State, armed political thugs burnt down a primary school meant for the Mbalom ward elections, where election materials were stored. In a country where politicians enjoy the luxury of operating above the law, securing the arrest and prosecution of such offenders proved to be a challenge for INEC and other security agencies. INEC made frantic efforts to curb and eliminate vote buying on election day. Some of such measures include the introduction of a new method of ballot folding and a ban on the use of mobile phones in voting booths. Despite INEC's best efforts, politicians were intent on playing dirty politics to secure their victory at the polls at all costs. In polling units across the Federation, such as Ekiti, Kano, Lagos, Bayelsa, Anambra, Imo, Oyo, and Kwara states, party agents were accused of inducing voters with cash sums between 500 naira and 5,000 naira, bags of rice, salt, and other food items to vote for their party's candidate. In essence, one of INEC's greatest challenge in the 2019 elections was poverty. In a nation where 98 million of the population lives in extreme poverty and there is an unemployment rate of 22.6%, INEC stood no chance against the monster called poverty, fueled vote buying at the polls. The credibility of the 2019 general election results has been hugely litigated, debated, and challenged by political observers, political parties, and political players. Unsatisfied with the Presidential Election Petition Tribunal's judgment, the PDP and its candidate, Atiku Abubakar, have approached the Supreme Court to seek redress. Civil society and international observers, however, agreed that the results of the presidential elections were broadly credible. Yaga Africa, a credible non-partisan civil society organization, watched the 2019 elections closely, deployed 3,000 observer teams, and based on its available data, admitted that INEC's presidential election results were consistent with its own figures and were a true reflection of the votes cast. Yaga assured Nigerians and stakeholders of its utmost confidence in the electoral process and the official election results. It can, however, be observed that in the Nigerian political arena, only the losing candidate and losing party challenges the credibility of INEC results and then frantically searches for discrepancies in order to disprove its loss. So, had Atiku Abubakar and the PDP won the presidential election, they would most likely err on the side of the truth and agree with Yaga that INEC's elections results are accurate. In view of the seemingly insurmountable challenges faced by INEC at the 2019 elections, the question is, if an enabling environment was created for INEC to carry out credible elections? And the answer is no. No electoral umpire could conduct hitch-free elections under the circumstances and immense pressure under which INEC operated at the polls. Therefore, INEC must be commended for its efforts and fearlessness in conducting the 2019 elections, even under life-threatening circumstances. It remains the role of INEC to conduct credible elections. However, it can only successfully carry out its functions with the full cooperation of all stakeholders: political parties, political players, security agencies, the media, and the voting public. INEC cannot deliver free and fair elections without committed support from the political class, who must be made to understand, in the words of former President Goodluck Jonathan, that no political ambition is worth the blood of any Nigerian.